I want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the custodians, the Oracle people, and honour your elders past and present. Thank you. Thank you, Delta. Thank you all for coming today. How amazing is the energy here? Who can feel it? Yeah? Oh, come on. Who can feel it? Hands up if you can feel it. All right. That's it. So, going back to September, my name's Luke Ficini. I run a purposeful branding agency called The Sponge, which is a B Corp. That's my day job. My purpose is to help good businesses become better brands. And that, in part, is to get good people together talking about good business. So I'm passionate about that. So my role today is part of byrontobundy and event chair for Earthbound. Now, I'm going to take you back to September 2017. I'd been a B Corp for nearly 10 months at that point and hadn't been to anything, hadn't met anyone. And I went to the B Corp Leadership Development Day event in Sydney, and it was phenomenal. There was, Seb, you were there? Hands up who was there? Only one? No. Sarah, you were there? Come on. All right, cool. We're not in Sydney now, so that's fair enough. That day, everybody that I sat with, the energy was like it is here today. And everyone that I sat with, anyone that I spoke to, it was just awesome. They were doing something so cool in business to change the world. And I was like, oh, this is my tribe. This is who I need to be around. So kind of selfishly, I tried to get that going there in Sydney. And Sydney, so it's not a place to thrive, is it? Not really. Difficult. So I moved to Brisbane. And when I was coming up, I connected with Tim and Mandy and said, let's take this off. Let's make this area the fastest growing conscious business region on the planet. So byrontobundy was born. Yes, we have a vision to do stuff in Bundaberg. It might be a little way off, starting, who's from, anyone here from Bundaberg? Hi, thank you. We can do the next event coming soon. So, we've been doing some events in Brisbane. The purpose is to get people together quarterly so we can build those bonds. Everyone's doing good things, but we get stuck in a rut, like I was, 10 months without going to a B Corp event, reinventing the wheel, what if I was connecting with other people that were doing cool things and had practices that they could share with me so I could focus on doing the impact that I want to do and not get stuck reinventing the wheel. That's what byrontobundy is. So today, hang on. My developers have been working hard to get the website live. We soft launched it last night. It is the hub for these things. So everyone here don't do it now, get online and create a free directory listing there and tell us about your business. You're also invited to produce content, a blog post that we'll publish there. We'll push it through our socials. We'll push it through our email so that everyone gets to know each other and we can start really supporting this ecosystem of good business here and inviting people in so they'll see it's real. When we have 1,000 people in there doing good shit and people can see it, then, the world will change. So, Earthbound, a sustainability event. It is the single most important thing that we can do today because if we don't fix this planet, then we don't have a future. We're bound to it. So many people have put effort and energy and resources into making this happen. So I'm going to thank some people now. And it might take a little while because it's been a big thing to organise. So I'd like to start off with where we are today at Elements. Last minute change. The team here, Joan, Alicia and the crew, not in the room right now, doing work that they need to, accommodated this shift. Joan, thank you. I'm just thanking you for your efforts and energies in helping us move this here. You've been very accommodating, gracious. Thank you very much. Three blue ducks who are putting on the food for us today. So generous, so helpful, just amazing. So we couldn't have done this without them. So generous. I think they might be the most generous, actually. So really honoured and grateful for them. We have the North Coast events crew that were controlling the sound and the lighting and the AV. One of the first companies to say yes and come in generously, so thank you very much. We have some beverage partners who've made it affordable for everyone to come, and Stone and Wood for the beer, and Cooks & Co for the wine. That's a Melbourne B Corp, by the way, so they're not here, unfortunately. And Emma and Tom's for the juice. So thank you. We've had some local support with the Corner Palm and also Small Giants. And then we've also got Rui, Tim's new startup, who are helping us measure the impact for the event. I'm going to get you to come up in a minute and talk about that. And then my team, the Sponge, who have done the graphics. Finally, there were a team that were a yes, all in from the very beginning. The farm. Most of you would have bought tickets with that as the venue, and we have changed in order to get 50, I think 60 more people here today. So it's a good investment, but there was a lot of effort and energy expended in that. We share the ethos with the farm, and I want to invite Ryan Sharpley up to say a few words on that.
Thanks, Luke. Look, I think when Luke first described the idea and what he was doing with the Byron to Bundy movement, it resonated so closely with what we're trying to do at the farm, which is about creating a community of like-minded people that can come together and do good things. So it was something that we just couldn't say no to. There's an A-list lineup of speakers, and I think in any one time, any one of them would fill a room, let alone having them all together. So I think it's something that we just had to be part of. So for those who aren't aware of what the farm is, it's a working farm just up on the entrance to Byron Bay. There's a network of businesses that are hosted there. And proud to say in the last 6 months we've had another 10 businesses join the group. We've had new farmers, new agricultural growers. So we're really sort of getting back to that village mentality and that sort of creating symbiotic relationships with different businesses that can all bounce off each other and flourish. And I think under that sort of guise, and here today is a classic example of when people come together, what outputs can happen. I think to me, sustainability is, there's several obvious aspects of that, and obviously the environmental aspect is clearly important, but it also goes into how you connect with your customers, providing them value. How do you provide relationships with your suppliers, your local community and your staff? So sustainability, I think, needs to be the heart of all of, ethical businesses' decision-making processes, and I think that was what attracted me initially to the B Corp movement. Proud to say we've recently just got our accreditation a couple of weeks ago, so that was something that we're pretty proud of. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think that whole process going through the B Corp certification was one that really resonated, coming from those different dimensions. In a past life, I had an industrial, dirty, messy business that love seeing the back of, to be honest. But we rolled out quality systems and all of those sort of things in the past, and it was really a set of folders that sat on a bookshelf for a while, and they just cost a lot of money to run and didn't really provide any value. So going through that B Corp sort of process was something that did provide sort of structure and framework to provide value. So we're very excited about that. And replicate what Luke said about the energy in the room. It is amazing. They had the promo video that went through, and someone described the energy that you can feel. So it certainly is something that should be a good day, and looking forward to doing it. But sorry we couldn't have it at our place, but there was too many of you. So it was thank you for Jane and Michael for making this happen today. So it does make in this region, I think there's so many great businesses that we're all here to help each other. I was talking to someone the other day. There's enough toys in the sandpit for everyone to share with. So, it's something that we don't need to play with them all ourselves. And I think that sort of collective mindset is a really important one that I think we're all pretty aligned with here today. So enjoy your day. Thanks for coming out on a Sunday, and look forward to meeting and talking with you later on today. Thank you.
And big congratulations. The B Corp certification is a huge thing to do. Hands up here who knows what B Corp is. All right, cool. Keep your hand up if you are a B Corp. Cool. So this isn't a B Corp sales pitch, by the way. Just if you noted people putting their hand up, you can ask them about it later. The way I like to frame it is you don't have to be a B Corp to come to one of these events, but if you're a B Corp, you come to these events. So it's you are part of the tribe. There are some people that have helped put this on, and I want to acknowledge all the volunteers in the committee. Anyone that has worked with me to bring this together. I'd like to, Tim, you want to stand up? Where's Mandy? Mandy here? Athanasia? Okay, they're still working outside. Can we get a round of applause for the crew that put this thing together? Thank you. All right, so where are we going from here? We get to have an awesome panel just to hear the stories and learn from the war stories. It's such a powerful thing, and I'm excited. So I've got front row for that one. I'm not facilitating because I want to listen. After that, we've got Q&A, and then we've got some amazing door prizes. We've got a pair of jeans from Outland Denim. We've got beer and a hat and a brewery tour from Stone and Wood. We've got a carton of wine from Cook's. We've got a cooler bag and juices from Emma and Tom's. We've got a brand story audit from my team. We've got some merchandise and a tour from the farm. SubPod have given us their ultimate composting product. It's amazing. Who's seen that on Indiegogo? Yeah. I would buy one now, but I'm moving and I don't know how much space I've got. Maybe I'll win it. I can't win it. I'm drawing it. Flow Hive. We've got the pollinator house. And who gives a crap? We've got some cartons of TP. Good TP. And we've got some extracts from Life Cycle. So, as I said, I'm not facilitating. So I'm going to invite up somebody in a moment. Julian Mitchell, the co-founder of Life Cycle, he's going to facilitate this. His business, if you don't know it, turns coffee grounds into gourmet mushrooms, amongst other things. I had a really good conversation with Julian, a long one. He convinced me to do a podcast, so it's a podcast. It's not out yet. In there, I learned that him and his crew, co-founder, are passionate about creating sustainable local food. And he's got some powerful extracts, which are in that box there. I use them and I love them. So whoever wins those as a door prize, boom. So the first conversation I had with Julian, he shared a story when I told him what we're doing with Byron to Bundy. He shared a story that really connected with me. I went, can you facilitate for us? He's like, yeah, cool. So Julian, can you come up and share that story and then invite the panel up?
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, it was an interesting comment when Luke said after, would you mind hosting the Earthbound? I wasn't sure what it was, but I was happy to do so and have so many amazing minds and speakers in one room is a very special event. So the conversation I had with Luke was around mycelium, and so we're a mushroom biotechnology company, and so we're in the world of fungi, and I guess whatever profession you're in, once you go deep into it, you sort of go down a few wormholes, and so the one we live by is around mycelium, and which this is the roots of mushrooms. And so this is known as the Wood Wide Web. It exists in the underground world. It's a lot faster than the NBN. The rollout was a lot easier. And so this is the natural system, and so we can be inspired by the natural systems and take that into our business lives. And so this mycelium is the connector underground. It's the network that facilitates trees to communicate to each other, to pass nutrients. It allows, mycelium essentially allows rocks the nutrients from rocks to be passed up to trees, and in exchange, the trees will give starches and sugars to the mycelium. And so this is a collaborative connection underground. And it's funny, I was with Will Brook from Brook Farm last week, and they're doing some amazing regenerative farming. And one of the first signs he's seen after this regenerative farming is a proliferation of fungi. And so whenever you're seeing within forests or within paddocks, you're seeing a lot of fungi, a lot of mushrooms popping up. This is the first sign of a very healthy ecosystem. And so that healthy ecosystem, really on reflection underground, what you're seeing is a very extensive network of communication and collaboration in the underground world. And so the question, I guess, what we're passionate about and what today is about is how do we connect the dots, how do we collaborate and all move forward, all hold hands, take one step together and create big change, tangible change through like-minded people, because there's so many people doing amazing work here, both on stage and in the crowd. So that's sort of what got me on stage today. So we'll introduce the guests and get started. So first up, we'll have Tim Baxter come and grab a seat. So Tim Baxter is from Who Gives a Crap, and he is the growth marketer there. So he'll come and have a conversation with us. Also, we have Sally Townsend from Outland Denim. So we have James Perrin, Sustainability Manager at Stone & Wood. We have Jess Manis, Community Environment Coordinator at Patagonia. We have Cedar Anderson, co-inventor of the Flow Hive. And that is everyone. So to start proceedings, we'll start with James Perrin from Sustainability Manager. Each speaker is going to speak for 5 to 10 minutes, and then after the panelists download their insights on their sustainability journey with their company and their mission and vision, we will then open up the floor for questions. So if you'd like to, I guess, introduce Stone & Wood and yourself, James, and take us on that journey.
Sure. When I came up on stage and I just thought I'd come sit next to you, I didn't realise I'd go first. Okay, so I might just pre-frame by saying I started to think about what I was going to talk about today at 4:30 this morning when my 4-month-old daughter had me out of bed and I was trying to rock her back to sleep. So we'll see where this ends up. It might be a little bit rambling. She didn't go back to sleep, by the way. She stayed up. So, I'm the Sustainability Manager at Stone & Wood, and I guess when I think about sustainability, or a lot of the time when we think about sustainability, we're kind of conditioned to just go straight to environmental projects or environmental reporting or something like that, which is all very important, but to build on what Ryan was talking about, it's so much more broad than that, and it goes so much deeper than that. And one concept that I really like to talk about in terms of sustainability is that it's a time-based concept. So you can't really be practicing sustainability in a moment, it's over a period of time. And when you think about how you run your business or even how you live your life, thinking about that very long period of time is very important to lay that foundation, and thinking about, ideally, a period of time so long that it's well and truly after we're gone, our current selves and our current lives are over. And we're quite fortunate at Stone & Wood that that's been the intention of our business from day one, is to really be this multi-generational brewer. That's not necessarily new or innovative in the brewing world either. So if you ever go to some of these traditional villages and towns throughout Europe, you'll come across these breweries that have been an integral part of these villages for hundreds, if not thousands of years, that are multi-generational brewers. And those breweries are just like your local butcher, your local baker, they're your local brewer. They've been there forever. They support the community. They're a meeting place for people to connect. They give back they hold fundraisers, they give back to local schools or fire departments or whatever that may be. And that's really the inspiration, and has been the inspiration behind Stone & Wood for day one, which is how do we become this multi-generational brewer that's going to be around for years and years to come, so that we're still going to be doing good in the world long after all of us employees are well and truly gone. And that's a really amazing thing. When you start thinking about what's the impact of your business is going to be after you're dead, it's impossible to be selfish because you won't be around to reap the rewards anyway. So, I told you I'd get philosophical. But I think that's really important, and that leads me into an example. We're asked to share an example. So, Stone & Wood started 10 years ago. Over those 10 years has been a very rapidly growing business, from starting at very, very small, putting out a couple kegs at a time, to still pretty rapid growth. There came a time where the brewing industry is very capital intensive. You need to spend a lot of money on stainless tanks and equipment and any sorts of machinery before you can actually brew into them and sell that beer. So you've got to spend a lot of money up front before you can make any money. And there's been multiple times, but one time in particular throughout the business where we had 20% external owned by Little Creatures, who was an independent brewer at the time. Little Creatures was sold to Lion, which is a big multinational brewing company owned by Kirin in Japan. And at that point in time, effectively, Stone & Wood was 20% owned by Lion. There was a really critical business decision at that point in time to go, well, we could continue to allow 20% stake of ownership, and then they've got a seat at the table and we've got to report to some of their requirements. There's always been the opportunity to sell more of the business, if not the majority of the business, to a bigger brewer or a bigger company. And what that would do would mean that not only would we not have to spend any capital in our business, we could spend it elsewhere. We could actually outsource the brewing, brew it at a mega brewery somewhere, and really get our beers out into the world, and probably in every bottle shop and pub in Australia and beyond. But the decision at the time was actually, we're going to spend that money, that little money that we have that we would like to spend on tanks, we're going to spend it buying back that 20% of the business. The reason being, again, having that foundation of long-term view, we want to be around for multiple generations. If we're selling out part of this business to others, we'd lose control of that. So independence has always been very, very important to us from day one, in that we want to be, I guess, in control of our own destiny. And then that allows us to make those critical business decisions like that one, to go, well, we're actually going to spend the money to, it might constrain our growth for a little while, but it means that we're going to be in control of our own destiny. It also, that foundation allows us to make other business decisions, like we want to be around for multiple years or multiple generations, so it makes sense to put the biggest solar system we can on our roof now, because we want to reap the rewards for that for as many years as we can. So I guess I'll wrap up this rambling philosophical discussion with, or monologue I should say, by going, having that really long-term view of the business for us is a key component of sustainability, and that's how I like to consider my role as sustainability manager, is how can we take the longest term possible view as possible, because when you're just in a 1 or 3 or 5 year financial reporting cycle, you're making different business decisions, and that's why politics sucks, right? Because everyone's just thinking 1 or 2 election terms. So taking a really long-term view of your business allows you to make decisions that are absolutely in the world's best interest. Sweet.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks, James. Do I have to press anything here? Or we going? Everyone can hear me, obviously. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and supporting such an amazing event. It's really exciting to be here, and thank you, Delta, for having us as well and inviting us to this land. It's wonderful. My name is Jess Late-Marnus, and I am the Community Enviro Coordinator for Byron Bay. So my role is, for Patagonia, my role is focused on the Byron Bay area, and I work under our Environmental and Social Initiatives Manager for Australia and New Zealand, who is based down in Torquay. So I'm actually quite new to this role, but interestingly, I've got quite a extensive background in graphic design and in the apparel industry. So I feel really fortunate to be working for Patagonia and to really be contributing to the good in the world, because I think there is a lot of room for business to actually really make considerable impact for good. And, you know, I guess a little background on my journey, I've travelled the world looking for waves at different points in time when I'd had enough of the office life. And the thing that really made an impact on me was, one, travelling through sort of underdeveloped countries and really seeing a lack of waste management and the impact that humans were having on the world. But what really ended up sort of shaking me was when I arrived in New York City at 4 a.m, and I actually saw the extent of the impact that the Western world was having, and just the volume of consumption. And for me, that was a real sort of pivotal moment that made me recognise how much of an impact actually I was having on the world, and also really made me realise that business is such an important part of the solution and sort of remedying where we've arrived at now and how we move forward. So in terms of Patagonia, I think it's really interesting because there are some parallels, and I'll speak about Patagonia being a responsible business. We don't tend to use the word sustainable too often, because we recognise that as a company there's still so much room for improvement in our practices and our supply chain. So we really try to be discerning and sort of recognise that we're just going along a journey as well. And I think that's really, in terms of looking at an example, the story that I'd like to share with you all today is actually goes back some time. It goes back to 1988. So I obviously wasn't present at that point in time. I was 6 years old on the other side of the country, on the other side of the earth, more like it. But I think in this story, and what I love about what Yvonne Chenard, the founder of Patagonia, sort of says is there's these key moments or pivotal moments. So like the moments that you and I may have personally in our lives, moments that sort of force you to shift your perception or reframe your interactions and how you move in the world. And just as that can happen for an individual, it can also happen for businesses, and those key moments are definitely present in Patagonia's journey as well. So there was actually an instance where Patagonia opened up a new store in Boston in 1988, and a lot of its workers in the first few days actually became ill and were giving reports of having headaches at work. And the store was new, something was amiss. So this really forced the company to start asking some big questions and try and work out what was going on. As it turned out, the air conditioning unit was broken and it was recirculating air. But what was discovered from that was that there was actually formaldehyde being circulated through the store, which is radical. Formaldehyde is the stuff that you preserve dead animals in and all kinds of things. It's gnarly, and it's definitely unhealthy for humans. So this posed even more questions, and instead of just going, okay, we're going to fix the air conditioning now, we had to go, all right, what's really happening? Where is this formaldehyde coming from? And it turned out it was coming from the cotton in our garments that we were wearing. So, at that point in time, it was 88. Patagonia had been giving to the environment and supporting environmental causes for a number of years already. It was a company that was started by outdoor enthusiasts, climbers and surfers, people who just were really passionate and cared for the outdoors, but without realising we were using toxic, harsh chemicals on our products and exposing our workers to them and our customers. So it really forced some deep reflection, and what had to happen was a real sort of in-depth review and look at our full supply chain. At that point in time, there wasn't really enough organic cotton on the market and available, but understanding, you know, the implications and digging deeper and finding out how many chemicals were actually used in the conventional cotton process, it was a really important step for the company to take to move away from it, and that really meant that it was about building relationships with farmers and developing, not just buying a roll of fabric from a mill, but actually understanding the full process and the full implications of the decisions that were being made by the company. So there's quite an interesting insight, which is 90% of the damage that will be, or environmental impact that a garment will make, is decided at a design stage. So the more we can sort of understand about our supply chain and the little steps along the way that go into creating something, whether it's a garment or whatever product you're selling or your business is focused around, really understanding what those steps and who it implicates along the way, and having those open communications, despite, you know, there being hard conversations to have. It's really important to have those. So yeah, that's one little story there. And I might just also add in for the last 30 years, Patagonia as a business has really all its decisions have been basically guided by its mission statement, which had been build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis. And this was, you know, quite a visionary sort of mission 30 years ago, but today, with the state of the world and the increasing sort of concern around the climate and the climate crisis essentially that we're facing, we've actually, as of November last year, just revised Patagonia's mission statement, and it is now we're in business to save our home planet. So there you go.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hello. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Okay, my name's Tim. I'm the marketing manager at Who Gives a Crap. We make eco-friendly toilet paper, and then we donate 50% of profits to help build sanitation and toilets in countries around the world. And to date, actually, as of last donation, we're up to $1.8 million. So, anyone out here, guys? Does anyone out here know or use Who Gives a Crap at all? Okay, everyone bring around another round of applause to your bums, please, because that's awesome work. Okay, so I have two stories I want to talk about, and they're both intertwined. And at the end, we can summarize with that. So at the moment, 27,000 trees are cut down every day to make toilet paper around the world, and most of those are virgin tree toilet papers. So basically what happens is you cut down a tree, put it to a pulp mill, use it, and then you throw it away. We all realise that it's weird to reuse toilet paper, and so as a company we believe that it's either recycled or bamboo is the best way to go. And so that's kind of the ethos around how our company begins, is we understand that a certain product has to perform a certain benefit to a customer, and so we kind of work with that feature itself. And so the story I want to talk about is probably around 12 to 13 months ago now. I got an email in my inbox, and it said, carton is arrived at warehouse. We have 10,000 boxes of 4-ply toilet paper. And I'm thinking, we don't make 4-ply toilet paper. This is not good. And so I talked to my boss. I'm like, hey, what's going on here? Why have we got this shipment of a 4-ply toilet paper? He's like, no, that's not right. And so within about half a day, we realized that we have 10,000 boxes of toilet paper with the wrong product information all over the boxes and the wrappers. And what happens is, with the law of consumer law, you can't sell things that are different from your website, and you have to make sure it's all congruent. And so we were in the situation where we're like, what do we do with all this toilet paper? Do we just like throw it to someone's house? Do we like, what do we do? Like, who knows what we could do here? And so like we're kind of sitting around, we're just like, oh man, this is not good. And so we decided that we weren't going to throw it away, because that would be a terrible, like environmentally, that's the stupidest thing we could possibly do. And so we kind of sat around and we're just like, oh, whoops, it's like, this is bad. And then we're like, whoops, okay, cool. Why don't we just tell people we made a mistake and then we'll just sell it to them anyway? And we're like, no, surely that won't work. And within about 2 hours, we came up with this idea of, let's be honest with the customer and say, hey, we've made a mistake, a big boo-boo, and we call it the whoops. And so we created what's called the Whoops Edition. And the idea is we create this entire campaign around the fact that we've made a mistake. We blamed it on one of our employees that didn't actually make a mistake, but we just kind of put him on the ball. Put his face on the website. We're like, Phil, you're the one who's getting the blame for this. He's like, wait, what? Too late. We've redesigned it. It's going out the door. And so we created what's called the Whoops Edition. So the idea is that what was going to be potentially a very costly mistake for us as a business, which on a non-venture capital-backed company is really hard to do, was going to be, from a money point of view and an environmental point of view, was going to be a really terrible thing. And so we thought, okay, cool, this is fun. Like, how can we sort of, this has got a good story around it, but how are we really going to push this out to people? And so we thought, whoops, farts. People love farts. Like, people love kind of that old toilet humor. Blah, blah, blah. Whoopee cushions. Let's put a whoopee cushion in everything and sell it out the door, and then make like that's going to help us sell the product and get it out the door. And it worked really well. We had everyone on board in the company. It sounded great. And so we sourced these whoopee cushions, and what we do is we put them in the boxes, and then basically we put out an email to our customers. This had one button on it. It said "Press Me," and it had fart noise. And then took people, the customers, to the website, and then sold the product. And it was one of our most successful campaigns to date. Now, it was great. The problem was we didn't realize, we thought the whoopee cushions were a biodegradable whoopee cushion, but it turns out there was one little chemical in some of the foam that wasn't completely biodegradable. And so we had this issue where we'd sent out what we thought was a really great campaign to save the environment and save the product, which was going to originally go in the bin, was actually to the detriment of the environment. And basically we had what was called the second whoops, and that was the real bummer. And so what we did is we thought, okay, this is a really good example of where we had what we'd call like a mini crisis in the company. And to give you context, we all work remotely. So we don't actually have an office. We work remotely from our homes. And so some of our team's in Los Angeles, some of our team is in New York, Philippines, and spread out across Australia. And when I mean our teams, at this stage, there's probably about 12 or 13 of us. So you can imagine we're all doing 10 different jobs at once. And so we'd rush into this campaign without having any kind of time to stop and think and really take stock of what was happening. And so what we invented in the company is what was called pause moments. And basically, whenever we have a campaign or some sort of project, every 2 weeks or within like a 50% of that project hitting its limit, we stop and say, is this fit with our business? Is it congruent with our mission? Is this what we want to be doing? Is this right for the customer? Is this what we want to be on the front page of a newspaper? Like, is this what we want as a business? And that's really helped us. I've pulled back some of our biggest campaigns we've ever done, purely in that reason, because we weren't prepared to put what we wanted out into the public arena. And so for those of you who have businesses, I would really encourage you that it can be easy to kind of get caught up and have a sunk cost fallacy in terms of economics and say, we've put this much time or this much effort into it, we have to keep going. And that's actually not always true. Like, pulling back and having a pause moment is really important in whatever you're doing from a day-to-day point of view or a campaign point of view is really quite powerful. And so what that led us to do is we had a really big pause moment as a company. And that sort of put us on a path of saying, where do we want to be for our what we call our big, hairy, audacious goal? We call our BHAG. And so basically, by 2050, we want to make sure that the 2.3 billion people on the planet that don't have access to a toilet do. And so coming on to James' point before is around sustainability. Like, I'm not going to be in the company when that happens, but we need to set up the company right now and reverse engineer it from today to make sure that we get there by 2050. And in order to do that, you have to make sure you're making clear decisions now that put you on the right path, as you're saying with Patagonia. And so what we did is we've got what we would call a pretty good environmentally friendly product. It's all recycled paper. The bamboo comes from agricultural land as a byproduct. There's no hurting local wildlife. All of our boxes are recycled paper, recycled cardboard. The whole supply chain is really quite environmentally friendly. But we do have these sneaky little bits of plastic which come out in bits and pieces which are hard to get rid of. So for example, on our boxes, we have one line of tape that goes around the outside. Sometimes we have warehouses which will have to sometimes bundle a box together with a bit of plastic around the outside. Our tissue boxes, for example, have a really tiny little bit of plastic where you pull the tissue out of the box and there's plastic there. And so for us, we've always had the mind frame that we're better off to do the best we can and start our journey to get that product out there and get the money to, like, that $1.8 million has come from a product which is not perfect. But we realised that we really, if we to stop and take stock of those pause moments, we really need to do better. And so the second part of the story is when we had those pause moments, we sat down and said, okay, where do we want to be in 2050 and how are we going to get to where we want to be? And one of the biggest elements we want to tackle was the plastic that we have in our products. We did not want to ever send out any products which we thought were not to the best of our ability. Now, for anyone who works in e-commerce, actually, does anyone here work in e-commerce? Okay, for those who don't work in e-commerce, it's all well and good to have a website and send products to someone, but the logistics can be an absolute nightmare. And when you're working across 3 different countries with a small team of 15 people, it's really hard to get that process perfected. And so we were at a size where we couldn't, for example, do R&D on what sticky tape worked well. You would have no idea. Like, it takes a full-time wage to figure out what tape is good on a box. Like, you're talking like dropping it, you gotta roll it, you gotta tape it, pull it off again. Like, it's quite an intense process, and it's really intense on a capital point of view as well. But we made the decision then and there, from that pause moment, that we would make sure we have the capital and the staff resources to make sure that we can remove all that plastic. And so 12 months ago, we made that decision, and then by the end of this year, we'll actually be completely plastic-free in our supply chain because of that pause moment. And so coming back to the point before is, like, sometimes you need to go to the nth degree of, like, effing up. So if there's kids in here, I want to try and keep G-Red. Like, you kind of have to go to that stage of going, like, okay, we made a big, this is not how we want to be, but let's take stock of it and see what we can do in the future. And so I would say, like, it's those pause moments and realizing that you can kind of move that process forward is a really big one. But for anyone who's actually in business trying to be sustainable, the second point I would say is don't beat yourself up about being perfect straight away. You're much better off to get out there and get the process started and then move towards the right direction. If we've been talking about plastic free for the last 4.5 years now, and we just couldn't get there because things like our suppliers wouldn't allow us to do it, our warehouse wouldn't allow us to do it, couriers couldn't do it. Like, there's all these constraints that we had no control over until we had this size to be able to take control of it. But if we hadn't done that, we wouldn't have 200,000 people around the world wiping 2 kids of crap. We wouldn't have made that $1.8 million. So whilst I would say, like, do your very best and don't cut corners, don't be afraid to, like, get the process started and start changing the behavior of people, because business is really powerful and people nowadays really, really, really want to spend money where they think it's going to be best spent. I bought a $40 bottle of wine the other day because it was vegan friendly and it was organic. I would never buy a $40 bottle of wine. Like, I'm like the kind of like cut and draft, like cheapest beer bottle around type thing. So, like, people want to spend money to buy good stuff. Like, use that while you can. Don't greenwash, obviously. That's like the devil. But, like, just do it, do your right thing, and then move forward with it. And you'll eventually get there. So for me, like, those are the 2 stories I think are really important. Who gives a crap, and really change the trajectory of the company and the culture internally. And so we're now really, really, really excited about when we have a situation where we think we have a pause moment, because that's often the best time to learn and to change the course of your direction of the campaigns. Thanks.
That's so good. My name's Sally Townsend, and I'm from Outland Denim. I head up advocacy and alliances. And just following on from what you said, it's those crisis points that lead to the best possibilities for change. And that's why I think the moment in history that we exist in right now, where the world is absolutely at crisis point in the way that we are destroying human beings and the way that we are destroying the planet, it is actually very frightening, and it's awful and it's scary. But these crisis points are also the most exciting points of history. The most exciting points, because that is where human ingenuity and new ideas and brand new ways of looking at things can come about. You only have to look at like examples like you were saying, or World War I, and what an awful thing that was, but wow, did that do incredible things for women in the workplace. So incredible tragedy. And even when you think about that personally from your own life, it's those crisis moments that we can get the most out of. And the most growth out of. So I think we're an incredibly exciting time in history, an incredibly exciting time, particularly for business. I sincerely believe, and this is why B Corp is so good, that business is absolutely key to solving the problems that we see in the world today from a human point of view and an environmental point of view. And they are both inextricably linked. You cannot separate them both. If you're harming the planet, you're harming humans. And if you're harming humans, generally speaking, you're also harming the planet as well, because people that are cruel to others generally don't care about the environment either. So business is absolutely key in solving those problems, because business are also the ones that are causing the most problems as well. They're doing more to harm the world than anything. Our industry, the fashion industry, we are the second biggest polluting industry on the planet. Okay, so we know that things have to be done differently. We have to think about things in a different way. In terms of Outland Denim and our approach to sustainability, the United Nations has developed 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we as a business have those 17 development goals, and we are working, we're hitting all of those development goals, whether that be a goal for ourselves or whether that be in planning phase or whether it be an action phase. And for brevity of time, I'll just talk about one of those. And the very first sustainable development goal that the United Nations has is zero poverty. And we are deliberately working to solve the problem of poverty in the world today. And we sincerely believe that business can do that. It's not NGOs and it's not governments that are going to solve the problem in a sustainable fashion. We sincerely believe that it's business that will be able to do that. And so the way in which we do that is we own our own manufacturing facility over in Cambodia, and we provide the opportunity for training and sustainable employment for people who have been victims of different sorts of human rights abuses. And our business is based around 4 key pillars. And what's different about our business is that it's not about just supporting an NGO or putting a band-aid on a solution or giving money or having an external program. It's the entire framework of the business. It's the rethinking of the way business can operate, and for us within the fashion industry, the total rethinking of that that creates our business model. So the 4 pillars that we exist on is creating, firstly, opportunity. And that's opportunity for those people that are in the cycle of poverty and don't have the capacity within themselves to be able to lift themselves out and need a helping hand. And so we provide that opportunity. The second thing that we do is we provide training. So these people don't have skills to be marketable or to be able to earn a decent wage enough to provide for their families and themselves. So we provide them and we pay them whilst they're training with us. The third thing that we do is we offer a living wage compared to a minimum wage, which means that they do have the financial capacity to be able to lift themselves and their families outside of the cycle of poverty, so that they can have enough money for a home. They can have enough money to pay for healthcare and education for their children, and even to save for the future. So there's the living wage element. And then we also provide education as well. There's no point paying somebody who's never earned money before in their lives a decent amount of money without educating them on how to use that money and how to best work with that money. So we give them education around budgeting and sensible spending, as well as education in women's health and anti-trafficking and self-defense and English lessons and so forth. So those 4 key pillars that we work around as a business that provide the model that can actually help to alleviate poverty and to help individuals pull themselves, not us giving a handout, them pulling themselves out of that cycle of poverty, having that wonderful education, and to be able then to re-input into the communities in which they exist in. So the effect isn't just for that particular individual, but it's also the family that they exist in, because they're able to support them outside of that, as well as pass on the knowledge that they gain. But also they have the financial and also the emotional and intellectual, if you like, capacity to be able to invest that into the community in which they exist in. So the impacts of doing business in a completely different way completely turns the tide on what is the norm, certainly within the fashion industry, and I know, well, it's littered throughout industry in the world where there's such incredible exploitation. So that's exciting. We've got some beautiful, beautiful stories of individuals that have gone through our business model and have beautiful stories as a result, as people being able to buy their own homes and farms for their families. A girl purchased a sibling out of slavery. So there's so many beautiful stories within that framework. And in talking about sustainability, even from just purely an environmental point of view, and thinking about it in a different way. There's a leading intellectual in the world by the name of Kevin Bales, and he spent 7 years having a look at the relationship between destruction of the world's environment and modern slavery. And he found that there was absolutely a link between those two elements, that where there is modern slavery, there is destruction of the world's environment. They are absolutely hand in hand. And he also did some calculations in his 7-year study that was published, I think, in 2017, that modern slavery itself emits 2.54 billion tonnes annually of CO2. That actually makes it the world's 3rd largest CO2 emitter. So if one is tackling modern slavery, one is also tackling CO2 emissions within the environment on a very large scale. And that's something else that we do at Outland Denim. We see supply chain due diligence as absolutely key and pivotal within our business model. So we know what's going on in our supply chain. We have a really high standard of behaviour for those people that are down our supply chain, those people who are creating the denim and milling the denim, those people who are working on the farms and so forth. We have a rigorous set of standards that have to be adhered to in order that people are not exploiting the planet and they're not exploiting other human beings either. And that supply chain due diligence is so important. And if we can prove, which we are doing, that there is absolutely, and it's the same as what you were saying, there is a demand for people and businesses that are doing the things the right way, that are not exploiting people and planet, and proving the profitability of that, the potential, the knock-on potential to get other businesses to do likewise is extraordinary and is incredibly exciting. Talking about the fashion industry alone, we're talking about a $3.4 trillion industry. We're talking particularly the massive group of people that are living in poverty that could be lifted out of poverty should we be able to change the nature of the way the industry works. And I believe having as much of a crisis as we are, can absolutely lead to that change occurring. So I am full of hope for the future. And I'm so excited about an event like this, is pooling these minds together that all want to achieve that one aim. So I think the future's bright.
Well said. I've got a supply chain is key, as you say, and I've got a story about how we began, but also a story about how we turned waste, which could be seen as not a great thing, into a positive impact story. Who here has heard of Flow Hive and knows the story? Okay, most people. Okay, good. So, I'll just tell it very briefly for those that haven't known. We've got about 2 hours, have we? No. So I grew up on a hippie commune, living in the trees at one with the earth, you might say, eating mung beans and brown rice and so on. Probably, in fact, definitely, on a personal level, much more sustainably than my life today. And out of that background of going to protests and saving the rainforest and so on, became strong ideals. And one of them was money is evil. The corporate world is the problem. And I still believe that to be the case. But through this journey, I've met so many interesting individuals doing amazing business for positive purpose. And that definitely gives us hope. So, my dad and I spent a decade tinkering away in a shed developing the Flow Hive, and it was done on the smell of an oily rag. Now, we decided to go for crowdfunding because we had nothing, and we got a small team together of family and friends. Sadie Allen down here is one of them. Put up your hand. And we've also got some GM over here, my nephew Jai. And so we made a good crowdfunding video with the help from my sister. We put it on the Indiegogo. And we reached our target of 70,000 in 7 minutes. And we're like, whoa. And then we broke a world record 2 hours later of the fastest to $1 million in sales. 8 weeks later, we had 12.2 million US in orders of our Flow Hive that didn't exist yet. We didn't even have a manufacturer. So, but I'm optimistic. So our team grew very fast, and along with that, of going from 0 to 100 in a few seconds is a whole lot of problems, and so it's actually, we'll just fast forward a little bit, and we've delivered now 25,000 hives to over 130 different countries. And we thought it's time we go and check our US supply chain, because we were really idealistic. We thought that the way to do it would be to open up manufacturing in all the continents that have big orders so that we can produce local woodenware for the local people. And that turned out to be a lot of hard work. But so we finally went to visit our manufacturers, and we had ordered... our wish was to use FSC. Does anyone know what FSC is? So that's the best certification for timber use that there is. My uncle helped write that certification and implement it. But it was hard to find FSC timber in a hurry for our Flow Hives. And so we wrote our own policy and thought, well, what we'll do is we'll give that policy to our supplier, they'll sign up to it, and then that'll be great. So with the help of my uncle, we put that policy together, and away we went. We finally went to visit them, and well, you know, they were doing actually a lot of good stuff, but Summer and I were wandering around the yard getting the factory tour, and I said, "What's that big pile of flow hive shingles?" And it's literally probably as big as this room. And they said, "Oh, well, the shingles are made on second shift, so there's no manager supervising." And in the kind of shock of, okay, that's a lot of waste, we thought we had to do better. So since then, for a variety of reasons, we've moved manufacturing all to Australia. We're now 100% Australian made. And walking around our Brisbane factory, I saw the flow hive shingles again, just the offcuts, the ends of them, the docked boards. I went, let's do something with them. Let's not waste them. So we came up with an idea to make a pollinator house, which is basically a little home for all the solitary bees that don't form hives. And they often have a very small radius of a few hundred metres. So if you can create habitat in your garden, then you can create stepping stones across the urban landscape for these 20,000 native bees of our world that do their amazing piece of pollination. But for us, it wasn't about selling that product. It was about raising awareness, getting people out into the garden. So we put that out there with 100% of the revenue, 100% of the profits actually going to habitat regeneration and protection and advocacy for our pollinators. But we didn't stop there. We thought, okay, now we've got these funds, what are we going to do? Do we just donate them? And from my point of view, it's always a great idea to do things out in the light rather than in the dark. So because it helps branding, it helps the awareness. So we decided to start a micro grants process where people could apply for a grant and would give them a small amount of money for their school project, for their bee corridor, whatever it might be. And so then we're turning what was a waste product into positive impact for our pollinators and positive impact again for the funds that get donated to great projects all around the world. Now, it's we've currently, through a range of projects, given away about 350,000. And we've got a new product coming up, which is going to be an ongoing product of 50% of profits for habitat regeneration and protection. But it's not enough. It's nowhere near enough. The next 20 years of our planet are pivotal to us. David Attenborough says, the plan is simple. All we need to do is work out all we need to do is make sure that what we do, we can go on doing forever. That's a beautiful explanation of sustainability. And we're nowhere near that. He goes on to say that it's up to us to do what humans are really good at and change the world. And it's up to us here. We are the ones who are in the incredibly fortunate position of having the time to do things beyond just surviving. We are the ones that have the time to think. We are the ones that can create action. We are the ones that can use business for positive purpose. We are the ones that can change the world. Thank you.
Wow. Very, very inspiring and very insightful. And a number of very strong messages in there around transparency for businesses of the future, supply chains and understanding your supply chain and really looking under the hood of what's going on in your warehouses and where you're sourcing your materials from. And I guess that will carry on now to consumers asking those questions, just like within the fashion industry, we're asking who made my clothes. It's what, amongst other industries, what does that supply chain look like, and really looking under the hood. And I think companies of the future, such as these great companies that are leading and building a community of people that are almost like a cult in terms of embedded in loving what those companies are doing, it's really around these companies are all very transparent, all very honest with each other, and it's about progress over perfection. And so now we're going to open up the floor to any questions that anyone may have. So we'll keep them to sort of 30-second questions, and there's many great questions out there, so we'll get the mics around as much as we can.
Is that on? Yeah, that's on. Hi, my name is Mitra, and I've been involved in business for good about 30 years, and in that time, several of the projects have gone to scale. And since I sold the last company, I'm doing a lot of mentoring again, and one of the questions I like to ask people is, how does it scale? So if you're selling a product that's aimed for Australia, how does it heal the planet if 95% of your potential customers have to still buy at Woolies or Target? Because they're buying your competitors' crap because they can't afford your product. And if the purpose of the business is to give away, 2 million is way better than most people have done in terms of giving away, but that's 10,000 toilets. And we need 400 million around the world. So how do we design our green businesses at the scale of the problem?
Who's in?
That's a great question.
Share on Facebook.
Yeah, like, right? Just put likes on it, hearts on it. So what's your name? Sorry again. Mitram. So there's probably two elements that I'll address quite quickly. With the sanitation problem, which is a lot like the problem for a lot of NGOs, it's not necessarily the things you see which are actually really important. It's the things you don't see. So, for example, what you were saying before about education and lifting people up mentally, that's actually one of the biggest elements you see. So you'll find with NGOs or the way that people donate, especially in the profit for purpose space, is there's two types of funding. One's called restricted funding, and the other one's called unrestricted funding. So what you'll find is you'll have people say, we do X and we'll build this X many things. That's what's called restricted funding. And what you'll find is that some communities don't need 500,000 wells; they just need one well. And so you'll find that it's not necessarily an easy marketing tool to use when it's not that sexy. Whereas unrestricted funding is where you go, here's a pool of money, $100,000. You're experts in the field. You spend it the way you think works best. And that often means educating women so they can then teach their children how to go to the bathroom, or it might be using the money to educate schools, or it might be about making potties as opposed to toilets. So it's there's a complex way around that, which is not as easy to necessarily decipher straight from a monetary point of view. So that's the first part. The second part in terms of scaling is that we're still very, very early on in the internet. Like retail, like e-commerce on the internet is under 15%. Like that's crazy. Like think about how much time we spend on our phones, and we're still not buying most of our products online, which is a really good point. And so when you then say we need to be getting, like, how do you get into the retail space? Like, do you get into Woolworths? Do you get into Coles? How do you then spread your message? There's actually not a lot of margin in those spaces to begin with. So when you're in those retail environments, you don't have a lot of margin to play with, and so you get squeezed quite quickly. I'm sure you've all heard stories about how the milk industry has gone with the big supermarkets, and it's very similar to a lot of industries. And so in terms of how do you scale that, I think the internet is one of the biggest things that we actually haven't actually understood ourselves as people. Like I don't think many people in this room think about, like, we're used to the internet, but it's only been around for 20 years. Like, that's nothing. Like, what's going to happen when the internet's been around for 100 years? Virtual reality is already starting to creep into Shopify sales, where you can start trying on shoes without even having a pair of shoes in your house. Like, we're only just beginning that space. And so answering your scale thing, the two parts to that is I think the internet is going to be huge. So D2C, like direct-to-customer businesses, are going to be massive. In Australia, we don't actually understand what direct-to-customer businesses are. If you go to America and you look at what all birds are doing, Warby Parker, like it's a whole nother beast over there. Like we're only just beginning that process. So that's the scale part one. And the second one is how we look at the way we fund our businesses. So a lot of people get starry-eyed with the idea of venture capital, which is fantastic, but that really dictates the way you grow your business. And if you have someone saying you have to grow at all costs, it really changes the way you look at sustainability. It means that the decisions you make now will say, we'll cut corners if we need to. So if you can find a way to fund your business, whether it's via, Indiegogo campaign, which is how we did our business as well, or if you can have like a, injection of capital from a sustainable source and you can scale it, then you're going to be able to do it properly. But it means you have to have a long-term view. Like if you want to scale a business and IPO in 10 years, then you're probably not going to have a sustainable business. Whereas if you say we want to reach a certain goal by, 2090, then you add people to your team at 10 people per year, and then you'll eventually scale your business at the appropriate scale. But it requires you to really reverse engineer it from where you want it to be. So I know that's kind of like, I don't know if that answers your question in a way, but it's kind of like a multifaceted angle with that one. But I think the key ones are where you get your funding from. I think the internet is a really big one, not relying on the big players in the space such as supermarkets. And the other one is how you want to kind of use that money in a way which is scalable, because you can spend it with certain NGOs and that will actually dictate your impact as a result.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'd be interested in the ownership model for sustainable businesses. Do you have aspirations to be broadly owned by those who are interested in your product?
Talk to that a little bit. Yeah. I can't talk for every conscious business, but I can talk to our business and the way that we approach ownership. I touched on before, in the story about how we actually wanted to be, independently owned so that we could create our own destiny and not be outsourced by multinationals and then be relying on growth at all costs. So part of our ownership model is thinking, okay, what's next? What's the next generation of owners? What does that look like? And we've, again, drawn inspiration from some other amazing businesses and even other brewers around the world to start to transition to more and more employee ownership. So every year, after a year with the business, employees have the ability to become shareholders in the business, and every year they get a new round of sharehold offerings. I think at last count, which was the last offering, which was December last year, we're now just over 70% of our employees are shareholders in the business. And we're still majority owned by our original founders as well. So I guess that's the other thing, is having founders with purpose that could quite easily be cashed out and sailing the world on yachts right now, but instead they're actually still working with the business, happy with where they are, still driven by purpose, is a very important element of it as well.
Internal culture is massive for that. I think internal culture, how they go from top down, whether it's believed in by the people who are running the business and the company itself, that is a really big player in that space. If you don't have that element to create that internal culture to drive through the business, coming back to the point before about scaling, if you don't have a team which believes in the same thing as you scale, it's going to be really, really difficult. So that really comes down to kudos to the founders. They've done a really good job with keeping that internal and not necessarily going to the lines when it was 20% owned. They had a very clear idea about how they wanted to do that, and that comes from top down. I mean, Yvonne has done an amazing job with that too.
Can I'll just add a little something. I think also definitely having that purpose, I think, behind your company also helps, the employee engagement and all that type of thing as well. But what Yvonne has done also is retained ownership of the company, which has allowed him to really make quite risky decisions at certain points in time, or to really go out on a limb and not do business the way that everyone says you should do business, to really invest a lot of resources, money into developing technologies, into putting money into grassroots activists, people who are really at the pointy end, putting money into science and working with other organisations and actually sharing knowledge, even potentially with competitors, just for a better end result for the planet. So it's not about oh, we're going to keep all our money and our knowledge for ourselves. It's recognising that, you know, the business can still flourish and the earth can flourish if we're actually sharing information and insights and the data and the discoveries that we're actually, you know, putting our money into. And there's a lot of stuff on the website as well about that if you want to dig into fabrications or, you know, and I think there's a great piece on just people banding together and also developing certifications, because that really helps strengthen the message for everyone as well.
Great, very good.
Yeah, I've been also working at this for about 40 years and internationally, and I'm advocating for a big picture activism campaign where more people are informed about how the growth at any cost system operates, so that people would understand why your products may be a little more expensive than most of the products in the market. Most people just don't know that right now the logic of the market is that, you know, Tasmania is sending its scallops to China to be cleaned, and England is flying apples to South Africa to be washed. Norway is sending fish to China to be cleaned. We have insanity going on because our governments are wedded to growth at any cost, and we get insanity in the dominant marketplace. And then there are all these good people, as we know, who now want to do things differently. But I think without an education campaign where we get some of the rules and end the 5.3 trillion subsidies to fossil fuels, which I think we could do because people are ready for change. People want change. But I think we should look at that bigger picture and just get some of the basics in order in the market. And I hope that you businesses would be willing to put some funds into education campaigns, and that you'll look at the film 2040, which I hope you've heard of, that's out. But we need to go beyond that too, to look more at the economy and the market. So I hope you agree.
I'll just have one comment to that, and I think it's a great point. It's a joint relationship between consumer and business, and so we're an activist every day with where we spend our money, and so with every purchase we're making, what are we choosing, and we can decide that way on a very micro level while we wait for governments and while we give these guys time to make that perfect supply chain and model. It's, you know, putting ownership on ourselves, because as Cedar mentioned, we are the change, and so to be that change, where are we spending our money? But is there any other comments on
Education absolutely is completely key. It's amazing when you're outside of this sort of space, the lack of knowledge of consumers, and absolutely completely agree. And that's one of the things we do at Outland Denim, is advocate to the government in relation to these sort of things, in saying we need help as well to educate. And that's starting, it is starting to happen, and it's starting to happen from a brand's point of view as well. When you're talking about fashion brands, there is an increasing awareness and an increasing momentum, and the conversation just needs to keep happening, and the growth rate is actually really encouraging. Just for example, the Global Fashion Summit occurs in Copenhagen each year, and that is just completely to do with fashion brands looking at sustainability and trying to solve these problems. And the attendance rate just in the last 12 months has more than doubled just in 12 months. And so that's just a little sign of the momentum that certainly is brewing out there. But you're right, education is absolutely key.
Hi, this is a bit of a left of field question, but in terms of sustainability of place, just a question for all the brands here. Many of our brands in Byron trade on nature, being unique, the reserves and the surfing and the nature that we have here. I just wondered how we as businesses can collaborate together to address the sustainability of place. As many of us, we're here as businesses, we're fortunate enough to operate here, but Byron is being consumed rather rapidly in terms of tourism. And from what Delta was talking about, the sense of country is so important. I just wonder how businesses and brands, because in terms of the continuation, the sustainability of what we're trading on, being images of beautiful nature reserves and places to surf and wildlife and animals, how can we work as businesses to sustain that and collaborate with partnerships like councils, governments, and things that we wouldn't traditionally have partnerships with, but that can maintain that sense of sustainability of here, Byron Place, because they're very integral to your brands, all of the people here.
All right, sure. I'll
I got it.
talk after.
Okay, cool. It's a very good question, and we certainly Stone and Wood, we're a very provenance-based brand. As you said, I think all of us have that element to our brand. I guess a couple of things. One is we've always wanted to honour that provenance. So we've always said born and raised in Byron Bay. We've always used kind of images of Byron in our branding. Truly, the beer Pacific Ale was brewed basically for the occasion. You're coming out of the surf and it's a beautiful hot summer's day and you have a Pacific Ale after a surf, and that was like the iconic image that we wanted people to resonate with Pacific Ale. And quite a lot of people come here, they get to have that experience, and then when they go back to their cold, dreary part of the world that they live in, because they don't live here, when they think of Pacific Ale, they're reminded to that experience. So provenance is very important. So I guess for us, one is trying to honour that. When we scaled up, we could have quite easily outsourced to other businesses. We could have built a production brewery in a cheaper metropolitan area. We could, if we went over the border to the Gold Coast, we would have probably saved millions of dollars to just put a bigger brewery outside of the region. But we reinvested. We built there wasn't the space in Byron, but we built our second brewery, which is our bigger production brewery in Murwillumbah, just 40 minutes up the road. And now we really honour, born and raised in Byron Bay, brewed and bottled in the Northern Rivers, and we really honour the Northern Rivers as that place. And it's I guess raising awareness of the provenance and the brand, but then also to the flip side, to try to close that loop, is how can we give back locally? So every fundraiser we do, we try to give back to a local cause, or we do give back to a local cause. So if that's a Karma Keg here in Byron, it goes to a Byron cause. If it's something in Melbourne, it goes to a Melbourne cause. We recently launched our own not-for-profit foundation called the Ingrained Foundation, which gives out, we're just about to give out up to $60,000 in grants, $15,000 to $30,000 grants to social and environmental organisations, and that first round is based here in the Northern Rivers to grassroots social and environmental organisations. So whilst there are some amazing national charities and not-for-profits doing great work, we want to give to grassroots Northern Rivers-based not-for-profits. So I guess we're conscious that we're drawing on this provenance for our brand, so how can we give back to reinvest in those grassroots organisations that are helping to sustain this part of the world? So that's one way that we try to do it.
Cool. Also on that, I guess, as a company, Patagonia has really been passionate for a long time about supporting grassroots activists and communities on the ground, people working in that whole environmental space, because the company's really built upon people enjoying nature, people getting out there, climbing up mountains or jumping in the ocean, and those wild spaces are really sort of important to us. So we definitely put a lot of energy and effort into really supporting the people who are out there on the ground and working hard to protect that essence of the community and the natural environment as well. So we actually we give 1% for the planet. So 1% of our annual revenue goes back into grassroots organisations, and we actually have it set up so each location we have a store. The store itself is actually able to give out grants as well. So, I mean, part of the crazy thing is my role actually exists. I still can't even believe it's actually a job, but I get to be on the ground and actually see the great work that different non-profits and environmental organisations are doing on the ground every day, and they're fighting for amazing causes. And I think you're really right. There's so much opportunity for businesses to come together, for council, for community groups, and for us, and join with those organisations to really look after this amazing part of the earth.
Questions down here? Let's hear from the next generation.
Yeah, so I do presentations at schools, like talking about the plastic problem. And when I would go to schools, what would you guys say in like a sentence? What would you guys say to them why your products or why your brands are best for the environment more than the products at Woolies or Coles or any of those, let's just say, unhealthy for the environment kind of shops? What would you say to them to describe that?
We'll get an answer from each person.
I might pass on that one, but given that...
Look, I think, as I mentioned before, we don't do everything right. There is still plastic in part of our supply chain, and nothing is perfect, but we really make a conscious effort to really look at our processes really thoroughly and try and make the best decisions we can. So we're weighing up the implications each different material that we use in our products has. We're part of, some of our products are nylon 6 and polyester, and we use those purely because they are performance fabrics and they function in extreme altitudes, and they deliver the functional side of what we need. But we've also undergone studies, and as we sort of go along our journey, we're really committing to using we're using those products still, but they're coming from a recycled source, so we're not using any more virgin petroleum, and we're looking at that, we're taking that sort of same thinking across all of our business. So yeah, just scrutinising the processes.
What was your name again, sorry? Alian. I love that you're actually doing this at your age at primary school. I was not thinking, I was probably thinking about Lego maybe at this stage. So kudos to you, that's awesome. The second part is, if you ever want a couple of boxes of product when you're spruiking these businesses at school, feel free to hit me up and I will give you some products as well. The answer to your question would be my belief, and the way the business believes, is a lot of charity and NGOs play on the emotional response of guilt to help carry their cause. And whilst that has some, it's legitimate, like that's how we feel, we actually don't believe that that's the best way to create change around the world and to cause behaviour change. We would much rather make you feel good about changing the world, so you then want to do it more often. And so what I would be saying to the kids in the classroom is say, hey, here's some solutions, and here's where we are in the world right now. Here are some solutions, and these are some products which can help you achieve those solutions. It's up to you. We're not going to guilt you. We're not going to make you force you to do it, because that's the last thing. Anyone who knows who's being told what to do, I know about you, I'm automatically like, mate, whatever you reckon. So I would definitely go to them and say, hey, here's a problem, here's a solution, here's some ways to get there. Go for it. And some will take it on board right away, and some might not. But I think most people, when they get to the point where they believe in what you're saying, they will go with the same veracity as you have as well. So that's how I'd go about talking about a product in any sense of anyone that is doing here. Obviously, I believe our toilet paper is the best toilet paper in the world, and I'm quite happy to talk to someone all day long about it. But that's how I would frame the point with any of those products. But again, congratulations to you. Actually, give me a round of applause. Doing this at school is amazing. Good stuff.
To talk about it in one sentence about what makes us different, particularly from an environmental point of view, I would probably talk to our supply chain due diligence. Not that the kids would know what due diligence is. That we know who makes all the component parts that go into our product, and that really does separate them. And we have very high standards, both environmentally, the way the planet is treated by all our suppliers, but also the way that human beings are treated, and that's what sets us apart.
My pitch would be a single beehive can pollinate 50 million flowers a day, which is extraordinary. And you can be in your backyard with your family, turning a handle on our flow hive invention and harvesting real local produce. And in doing so, what we find is people open their eyes to the very world around us, the flowering trees, the interconnectedness of all life on Earth.
So poetic. I wish I had words like that.
So poetic. One more question.
Sorry, because I know you've been waiting for a while. My name's Bridget. I was just blown away by all of you, actually. It was really interesting. I took notes from everyone speaking. Tim, I was really glad to hear about how you're saving the trees, because when I looked on your website and was buying the product, I'm going, okay, they're saving all these trees, but how? So it was really good you explained about the bamboo and the recycle. It was probably there somewhere and I just didn't find it. But what I wanted to know about was how you're actually reducing plastic in your flow, because we're just a small startup.
What are you doing? Let's promote it. No, I'm serious.
Byron Eco Bags is our first product. Our company's, our brand is Healthy Planet Now.
Can you just wave it up in the air? Show it. This is byronecobags.com or .org?
Well, it's healthyplanetnow.com.
Oh, healthyplanetnow.com.
My daughter told me I wasn't allowed to have byronecobags.com.
Amazing.
So it's silk cotton.
Can I be your model? I'm your model.
Yeah, that's what everyone says. They're not a top, they're a bag.
Okay, awesome. Sorry, I'm interrupting you.
And it's a rubber tag on it so that it's biodegradable, and we're getting cotton labels. But so, yeah, what we're trying to do is not have any plastic in the packaging and have the whole bag biodegradable instead of replacing plastic with more plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so how are you doing? You touched on you were doing it in a whole heap of ways.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's a couple ways around it. Like, I'm trying to do this in a simple way. So what happens if for us in the way I watch I help a lot of other startups in Melbourne as well. And the way that you often see the tricky part occurring is, as a business, you're often using third-party entities or organizations, and you don't always have control over the way that process works. And so when I touched on about us, the way that we were moving away from plastic free, there's multiple ways that we've done that. One is that we've brought someone on who actually helped. She was part of the whole Adidas recycled shoe production. So we brought her on and said, hey, how do we do this? What's the best way around it? And then she's gone out and done it. That's someone's wage, and someone's wage costs money. And when you're a startup phase, you don't have money. So that's the first part that's tricky. The second part is that you then need to do a lot of the processes around. So for example, with our plastic free in the supply chain, we built our business on having warehouses in each state, so we could limit the environmental footprint and also get product to customers as fast as possible. The problem with that is that we have them in all those different states, all those different businesses. They all have their own different suppliers and their own different processes, the way they organise use of plastic. So for example, we have a courier that would say if you wanted to ship 2 boxes at once, you had to put plastic around it to bundle it to get it to the customer. And we were wedded to that courier because we couldn't afford to move up to the second tier. And so a lot of what we've been able to do is only come out of scale. And so the problem that I was kind of getting to before is that we've always wanted to go plastic free, but because of our scale, we couldn't get there. So we could have said, all right, sorry, can't do this, we're going to go home and play video games. We've said, no, let's just keep doing the best we can, be environmental as possible where possible, and we'll get there in the end. And so now we're finally at that stage. So my advice to you would be is to do the best you can, use biodegradable plastic. There's always alternatives. If you can use those, do it. But I would definitely say that go with the most eco-friendly version, and then have that plan of going, when are we actually going to remove away from that product and that use. If this means someone's going to use this as opposed to a plastic bag, then I think that's a worthy cause, and that's a good thing to be doing. It's a tricky thing because any amount of plastic is bad plastic. That's the truth at the end of the day. But it's about saying, where do we think we can actually take this, and is it worth the result? And that's kind of one of those things where you'll have to make that decision internally. But the tricky part and the hard part for this is that because we're at scale now, we've been able to do it, and that's taken resources and people. But there are other ways, if you want to do it, you can kind of focus on that stage, but be prepared that it will take you a little bit longer to get there. No worries.
Great, guys. Well, that's the end of the panel session. So another round of applause for these great speakers and panelists. And you can grab a seat now, and we'll welcome Luke back to stage, the wonderful organizer.
Hello. Such a privilege to be sitting at the front for that. So I'm glad you all came for my show. A few things. So much wisdom in there. But what I took away is you really got to scrutinize your entire supply chain. Really get deep in your product. It's not enough just to sell something and donate. Tokenistic stuff doesn't work. Speaking of that, we wanted to measure, not of tokenistic stuff, I'd like to invite Tim up from Rui to talk about what we're doing to measure the impact of this event. Tim.
Are we on? We're on. Before I do that, as co-chair of Byron to Bundy along with Luke, I wanted to do one thing official before we do it. We thanked all our amazing sponsors, the amazing volunteers, everyone that's been around here, but if anyone has ever organised a party, had a bit of party pressure, or tried to even organise a wedding, bringing this together has been an epic adventure. And I'd love to thank Luke for the biggest round of applause, because no matter how much the committee worked with Luke, he was a one-man driving force behind this. And for me, before Byron to Bundy started, I remember with Mandy, we got a few groups together, and we'd always have about 10 people in a room. And I'm pretty sure they turned up to learn about good business just for the free ethical cake and tea. And nothing really happened. But look what we've done here. We've got 200 people in the room ready to make change happen. So thank you so much, Luke. And I would encourage everyone to give Luke a free hug throughout the afternoon, because he deserves everything. So thank you, Luke. The other part of my what I'm up here to say is I'm the founder of Hatch, which is a strategic agency that helps businesses scale for good. But we've just launched a new impact measurement business called Rui or Roy. And as everyone mentioned before, the importance of understanding the impact you're actually having is essential to moving forward in transparency. And for us, as the Byron to Bundy and the Earthbound event, we want to know the impact we've had. Gathering people together is extraordinary, and seeing what connections and what can be happen from being in this room. And for us to improve, for us to scale what we're doing, we want you to help us understand what happens after today. So you have to do one simple thing. If you see an email come through from Byron to Bundy, it has a survey link. I know we're kind of a bit over surveys, but it is really important, and I'm not going to force you to do it. Like I said before, if you feel like contributing to understanding how we've had an impact today from what you've done and what you take away from this, just fill the survey out, and I'll be so happy, and we can communicate the impact we've got, and we can learn and improve that over time. So thank you very much.
Okay, so this is is that working again? All right, good. We're about community. There's a few things going on in the community. There's something I want to share with you in a moment. What I find when I think about sustainability is, well, I didn't really think about it this way until I learned that there's an event coming up that I'm going to in 2 weeks in Mullum called Renew Vigil for Grief. Now, if you are active in sustainability, then there's a good chance that you are hurting from the devastation that's happening on the planet. And I know that I am, and I didn't really think about it, so I'm going to this. It's a local event. It's very low cost. I recommend that you support it if you can get to Mullum on the weekend of the 9th, 10th, 11th. So that's coming up. So that's first and foremost. The second thing is, hands up if you went to a Stop Adani protest. Good. Add your hands if you thought about going to it, but you couldn't. All right, cool. That's the audience that we're looking for. I did, and I was very passionate at Brisbane, and I saw lots of people that were standing up for it, but I felt like I was left a bit aimless there. Like, what do I do as an individual? I don't like politics. I don't know what I'm doing there. And then when Sarah suggested, actually I saw this crew here doing, what do you call it, Fuckfest, and I thought, what's that? Okay. Then when Sarah suggested it as an action plan on how we can vote for the environment, bring it on. So I'd like to invite Sarah up, Sarah Rickard, and Kate. Fantastic.
Is this on? Yeah. Thank you so much, Luke. It's so lucky. We were asked to write on our name tags what we think the world needs more of, and mine says more hugs. So would you like a hug? Thank you so much for organising this. My heart is absolutely full and bursting, and I don't know if it's the tonic that I had of Julian's earlier today, some of the Lion Mane tonic, but my brain is also firing as well. I'm a little bit out of my comfort zone. I'm actually pretty terrified right now. But I'm going to invite you all to do something in a minute. But first, I wanted to just thank Delta for the beautiful welcome to country, and also acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land. And yes, it is so beautiful that this is a meeting place, and you've brought us all here together. As Luke said, I was on the Stop Adani convoy last week, just a few moments after Melissa Price, our Environment Minister, had just given approval for the groundwater to go ahead for Adani, and I thought that was pretty shit. And I'm sorry that there's kids in the room, but I'm angry and there will be a few swear words. So as I was travelling up the East Coast, we stopped here in Mullumbimby, and 5,000 people rocked up for the Stop Adani convoy. The roads were blocked, and there was a real energy in the air, but there was something really missing. And I knew that we didn't have enough momentum to potentially stop this and to create a climate election like we really need. So this man, I'm actually shaking. I'm a public speaker, doing this for a living. I never shake. So Matt Kendall, my dear friend, my brother, looked at me and he said, "Sarah, I think it's time for a fuck fest." And so we did. What the fuck's a fuck fest? It's essentially a creative orgy of ideas to solve a really dirty problem. And it was actually born 2 years ago, where we were trying to stop the plastic pollution problem. So basically what it means is pulling together all of the biggest legends that we know to hack the problem as fast as we can. So on the eve of Earth Hour, Earth Day, we pulled everyone together into a room and had 3 hours to figure out how we would make this a climate election in the next 2 to 3 weeks, because unfortunately it is not a climate election, it's not making it into the media, and that's shit. Just yesterday, Forbes released a bit of information from Harvard saying it's not actually 12 years that we have left, it's 5. Did anyone see that? Yeah. I don't know about you, but we've got Adani, we've got the Great Australian Bight having seismic testing happening. We've got it happening up the east coast of Australia. It's ruining our whales' ability to be able to hear and therefore sing. People are trying to pull all of this carbon out of the ground when it should be drawing down into the ground. So we've made a plan. I don't know if you've realised, but I'm sure you have, but there was 150,000 students that striked for climate action just a month ago. Greta has been causing a real scene with 1.5 million people stopping as well. Extinction Rebellion has been happening just last week, where they shut down London, and it makes me think, what are we doing, what can we do, and what can we do to actually make this a climate election here in Australia? We need to become the media, because the media is not doing its job. So we have Kate here. How do we become the media, Kate?
Thank you. Oh, I've got one. Can you hear me? Great. How do we normalize voting for the planet? We talk about it. That's right. So news spreads as fast as drought-induced wildfire. And we each have access to diverse networks right here in our pockets today. So I invite you, please get your phones out. Get them out. Yep. That's right. We've got 12 years yesterday, 5 years today. All that matters is what we do right now. We have to take action now. So I'd like you to set an alert in your calendar, open the calendar app, and set an alert for 10 a.m. Monday morning called Vote for the Planet. Yep, go ahead, do it. We're all here because we feel we have something to give back to our community and something to give back to the planet. Tomorrow, Monday, 10 a.m.
Postal votes start tomorrow.
So on May 18th, you can vote. But until then, we have an opportunity to amplify our impact. So I invite you, when that alert goes off at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, to spend the next half hour getting in touch with 10 people and ask them to vote for the planet and make this a climate election. And ask them to then find another 10 people. And you can go out and you can ask the 10 most influential people that you know. You can post on your social channels. You can call your grandparents. You can talk to your coworkers. Because in our online testing, we asked people, and people don't know who to vote for. They don't know how to vote. And they don't realize that preferencing their vote is probably the most important part of the voting process. We just learned last night that 7 million votes were exhausted in the last federal election because they didn't preference. This is a country of 25 million people, so 7 million votes is significant. So we have to share this information on how to vote. So we're doing that. We're putting that together for you. You can head to these hashtags to find out more information, and fuckgiving.co/climate for this information, as well as how you can get involved and support the Australian youth in in their movement, in their march, so that we make sure that every vote is a vote for their future. If we want this climate election to go the way of the planet, we have to share this information. So please, I encourage you to get involved in those hashtags and find out more information. We're about to break for lunch and mingle, so we invite you to connect with us here, as well as online. We're also live streaming. Hey. So you can rewatch this later. My Instagram's Plastic Free Mermaid. That's where this is going to be. And share it. And if you're not really into social media, now's your chance. You can reach out to your network and use your voice in your personal network. And if you have fear around talking about politics or climate or science or your opinion, just think of those 150,000 Australian youth that are striking for their future. Think about these teens who are so frustrated at their lack of voice. Yeah, so we can do it for them. This is our chance to be aunties and uncles and amplify this message that they're crying for and that they don't have the power to vote for in this election. So, this is, Fuckfest Legends, if you could please stand up. Maddie's live streaming, go Maddie. These are humans that are here to help. We had this Fuckfest earlier the week. Thank you for being epic legends. So if you have questions about how to activate your network and make a difference, ask them. Amazing humans. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sorry. Shout out to these guys. So the time is now to act. I'm going to be talking about climate change every day. I'm going to ask 10 people to vote for the climate in the climate election and ask them to ask another 10. So this is how we become the media. This is how we create a movement. This is how we hijack politics. And this is how we unfuck the climate. Thank you.
Thank you, legends.